My name is Emily Bialowis. I'm the Saltwatch manager here at the Isaac Walton League. And today what we're doing is we're doing a quick wrap up of our last Saltwatch season, which has been a huge success. And then we're going to meet some of our Saltwatchers from across the country and hear some of their story of how they've engaged in Saltwatch. Just some logistical note, there is a chat box if you're having any issues. Kira, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Kira is going to help us field questions in the chat box. And if you have questions for myself or the panelists, we'll answer that after we go through some of the panel questions. So everyone should be ready for that. Okay. There we go. So just a reminder about the goals of our Saltwatch program. It's to raise awareness about that connection between salt on the road and our stream or river or lake health. We want to help identify some hotspots of chloride. And further on, now that we're more into this program and we've got a better handle on it, we want to advocate for smarter application of road salt, both, people on their driveways and also hopefully local government or local businesses. So this program is not possible without our partners. We now have official Saltwatch partners. So if you would like to be a partner, if your organization wants to be a partner, email us, let us know, and we'll tell you what's involved. We have many partners. I don't think they're necessarily all on this list. And then if you look at the map on the left, we have about 27 communities that I would say are Saltwatch communities. That means we have at least one organization involved and also a handful of volunteers. So there's a coordinated effort happening. And you can see we've got a lot in the Mid-Atlantic, New England, Midwest, and that's where we've been focusing. If you're outside that area, we still want you involved in Saltwatch, but this is where we've been focusing so far. So some results. We got over 4,000 readings coming in, which is thanks to all of you. More than 850 volunteers. That includes people from community groups, students, not just volunteers, some staff, in 24 states, and at least 100 community and school groups, which is great. And one thing about that 4,000 results, this is our 4th full year of Saltwatch. The previous 3 years combined, we almost had 4,000 results. So we've doubled everything we've done before in Saltwatch in this year. And I'm still getting results coming in and data sets, full sets of data. So 4,000 is our low number for this season. This is our map from this year. You can see these are clustered, so we only get, we don't get so much detail here, but we can see some dark red spots of high chloride levels in certain areas. Not surprisingly, they tend to be near metro areas. And while some areas look green, what we've talked about with Saltwatch is that if it's a waterway that shouldn't have any chloride and it has, 82 parts per million chloride, that's a lot more than the nothing it had before, and it has an upward trend. So while, I'm less alarmed about places that I see are green, I think it's still worth advocating for smarter salt use everywhere. And then here are our Saltwatchers of the month from the last season, some of whom we're going to be meeting today. It's been great to get to know and highlight these volunteers and we're going to hear some of their stories in a little bit. And here are our results from the last 4 years. It's, again, a similar looking map. All of the dots that have the dark outline around them are from this season. You can see we have a lot of folks monitoring in the DC, New Jersey area, as well as Twin Cities and Michigan and Wisconsin. I don't have much to say about this, just that it's been great to have the program grow over the years and to find where those hotspots are, which we can help you start to tackle at the community level. Just a little refresher that this is what a Saltwatch post looks like on Water Reporter. This is a great picture. We can see the card, we can see the strip, and some comment. And they've tagged the Isaac Walton League. Just a heads up, next year we're going to have a slightly different but hopefully easier process for this. And yeah, we've gotten over 4,000 results this way, and it's been great to see all of your contributions come in. And a reminder when you should monitor and when you have monitored. Back in the fall, we said go out before a winter storm, get a baseline reading. After salt has been applied to the roads or before a storm, and then after the first thaw event, and then after the next rain event. I know that some of you have gone way, way, way beyond the 4 strips we send you in the mail, but this is a good place to start with your 4 strips. And then just an example of what can happen before and after a storm. This is nearby to our headquarters in Maryland, in a park nearby. The chloride reading before the storm was 123 parts per million. Not that that's low, but it's not over that toxic level. And then after the storm, that strip was off the chart, and that chloride reading was over 600 parts per million, but possibly in the thousands based on some of the high range results we've seen. I just wanted to highlight some of the communities we've gotten involved. Connecticut, this is sort of central northwestern Connecticut. They've gotten really involved this year with a few community groups. We have not seen really high levels of chloride there, but they didn't have any of this information previously. So it's been good to get community involved and to find where those hotspots are. In the Pittsburgh area, we have seen some high levels. A lot of this monitoring is due to student groups. So there's a homeschool group there, and there's an organization, Creek Connections, that connects with local schools, and they've helped highlight some of these hotspots. There's also, if you look in the southwest corner, that's Washington and Lee College, and they have a coordinated effort with the Conservation District, I believe, the county, the local Isaac Walton League chapter, and they're all working together to monitor for chlorides in their community. And then last but not least, as far as really high chloride levels that we've seen and a lot of community participation, we have about 12 community groups in the greater DC area. And I think where there's more monitoring, we tend to find more higher chloride levels, or just more of those high chloride levels. You can see a lot of red on this map. Just a reminder that on our website, that once you have found high chloride levels, or even if you haven't and you want to start making changes in your community, we have some resources for messaging in your community, for contacting letters to the editor, local media, talking to local government, and sharing best practices. We have these on our website. And if there's something we're missing, let us know. We might be able to help you make it and share it with our whole national Saltwatch community. One other thing I wanted to highlight is this past year, we have a new program that is local to our area, but it's a funded community project focusing on the city we're in, which is Gaithersburg. And there have been community events. We've, personally in person handed out flyers. There was a plow painting event. So the community, the local government is involved in trying to get the community invested in reducing salt use. This is Kira, who you might hear her voice on this webinar today, at the local farmers market, getting the word out about lowering salt use and also handing out kits. This is that Paint the Plow event, which I think went over really well. And it's a model that we'd like to help our partners recreate in their community if possible. So what you can do in your community is you can keep monitoring and sharing your results, use up your whole kit and share your results with us, and share your results with your neighbors, local businesses. Talk about smarter salt use. We talk about you only need 12 ounces in a cup for a 20-foot driveway. And if you find any oversalting, you should report it to your city or county. One thing that we're starting to compile that I'm asking you for is if you know who in your city, county is the right department to report oversalting to, so we can have that as a compiled resource on our website. One more thing is that, sometimes packaging on salt says eco or pet friendly, but they can just slap that on there. It's good to look on the back, look at the label, see what's actually in that salt. And then if you want to get more involved and you're part of an organization, you can become a Saltwatch partner and we can do this more. Saltwatch.org has all of our information, but if you have any questions and you want to reach out to us, we're saltwatch@iwla.org. Great. Okay. Now I'm going to ask that our panelists join us. If they can turn their cameras on. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello.
Excellent. I think this is everybody. Okay. So I'm just going to ask that each of you introduce yourselves. And then I'm going to jump in and ask some questions about your involvement in Saltwatch. So just tell me, where you're from and if you're part of any particular organization. So we can start with Jeffrey.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Selling, and I'm a Pennsylvania Master Watershed Steward, and I do my Saltwatch monitoring in a small arboretum just outside of Philadelphia with a badly impaired creek called Rock Creek that runs through it that we're working on to restore. And our salt monitoring is part of where the information we're gathering to help us with that.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Juliella?
Hi guys, I'm Juliella Hankerson. I'm a sophomore. I'm from Coshocton County, Ohio. It's about 2 hours west of Columbus. I monitor a trail that I test on the trail. There's a creek on the trail that I am monitoring, walking on weekly. So,
Randy?
Good morning. My name is Randy Holtz. I live in Edina, Minnesota. I am a Minnesota water steward. I'm also a member of a citizens group advocating for correct amount of salt use. It's called Stop Oversalting. I've, over the last year, monitored in 2 different locations. One at the 9 Mile Creek and the Minnesota River.
Excellent. Kelly?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly. I am the volunteer and member coordinator with the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance. So I have monitored a few creeks over the past couple of years, but I mainly just coordinate volunteers for monitoring. So this year, I believe we had over 30 volunteers monitoring different creeks and streams in the Fox Wolf River Basin, which is essentially northeast Wisconsin.
Carl?
Hi, my name's Carl Van Est. I'm with the Muddy Branch Alliance. And so we hit a number of spots along the Muddy Branch, and I've got a couple volunteers. So we hit it. We've got about 5 or 6 spots along the Muddy Branch. We touch the Watch Branch on occasion. It's a good thing.
Great, thank you. So the first question is, how did you first hear about Saltwatch, and why did you want to monitor for salt or chlorides? Randy?
Okay, I first learned about it through both the 9 Mile Creek watershed and through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And being a member of Stop Oversalting, I'm maybe a little more connected to different organizations that are looking at chloride use. So that's kind of how I got started with it.
Great, thank you. Juliella, I don't know the answer to this.
I actually have had the honor to volunteer with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to monitor rivers. And so I was already doing a lot of water quality research. That's actually how I found the Isaac Walton League and the Saltwatch. And because of my research for the ODNR, I had gotten really excited about water health. And so that was just another thing I could do that I wanted to be able to help out with. So that's how I got started.
Great. That's great. I do just want to note, Juliella said she's a sophomore. She's a sophomore in high school, and she's been doing a lot of monitoring. Like every week she puts in results. It's great to see. Kelly, how did Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance get into Saltwatch, and why did you want to be a part of it?
So with my previous position at Fox Wolf, I provided stormwater education for NUSC, which is a consortium within Fox Wolf. So I had been talking about salt runoff and all the other different kinds of things that are running off in our urban areas for years. And I felt personally that salt wasn't getting enough attention, and it really bothered me. And I was taking and sending photos of like oversalted sidewalks and parking lots. Still do that. Send that to my friends and family who may or may not want to see those photos, but I'm all about it. So and then I just got an email from the Isaac Walton League, and I heard about the Saltwatch program, and I thought this is perfect. So a couple things along with that. For our urban communities of 5,000 members or more that have MS4 or multiple separate municipal separate storm sewer systems. There we go. MS4 permits. So this actually counts as an active participation activity for stormwater education. So our communities appreciate the data, and they also appreciate, the photos and all of the volunteers that are helping out. So it's kind of a win for everybody, and for that reason, I know we want to keep doing it for sure.
That's great. And that's a great reminder that, we take data in, but also that the data we collect we collect it so it's all in one place, but we are happy and we do share it back with anyone who's interested in it. And yeah, that has been appreciated in certain communities who have taken it. Carl, how'd you get into Saltwatch?
Well, Emily, you're one of the reasons why I attended a macro invertebrate lecture that you did. Very good, but I found that I wasn't very good at identifying the macroinvertebrates. And so towards the end, you started talking about salt monitoring, and so that was one reason why I jumped in. I also heard a lecture about salt that the Muddy Branch Alliance had put on, and you know they'd got a gentleman from the Maryland Department of the Environment to come out and talk, and so that was also widened my eyes a bit to the problems with salt. So that's how I got started, and it's been I'm all in, as you know from my emails and getting too much stuff for me.
Yes, Carl is quite gung-ho about this. I think that's an understatement. Jeffrey, how about you?
Well, I sort of when I retired, became a stream keeper with the Tookanee Frankfurt Watershed Partnership, which is one of the Saltwatch Partners, actually, that was on that list of partners. And initially, we did both some chemical testing, but also a lot of observational monitoring, looking for scum and bubbles and detritus and things like that. And then that part of it, the chemical part stopped, and I was concerned that we were just doing the observational work. And then at some point, I attended a training that was run by one of the Philadelphia area watershed groups that Saltwatch was talked about, and I immediately wanted to get involved. I had been involved with Isaac Walton League actually when I was a science teacher, doing macroinvertebrate work, interestingly, before I knew the other aspects of the Isaac Walton League. And so I did the training and started monitoring, but we were getting such high levels that my monitoring partner and I, Krista Peterson, we decided we would monitor year-round. And that's been a pretty fascinating process because we're discovering we're getting really high levels in our area, even after the salt season is over. Even in August, we're getting super high levels.
Right.
So that's led to further trainings, and also just now, it's been kind of exciting. A number of the area watershed groups have really embraced Saltwatch at this point, and there's a big push in the Philadelphia and the greater metro area to do the salt monitoring and to begin meeting with streets departments in various communities. And it's just become an area of emphasis. And so it's really great to have this data to back up those comments.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I think you cut out a little bit there, but we got the gist. One thing I know about the Philly area is that some of those groups got involved in Saltwatch because there was an unexpected early snowstorm, and they had some continuous monitors in the stream, and they found really high conductivity levels even when the municipal salting didn't happen, that it was all from private salt application. So they were looking for some way of like, how can we start documenting what's happening here? Great. Okay, can everyone still see and hear each other? Just checking.
You're cutting out occasionally for me, Emily.
Okay, I think you might have a little bit of a bad connection, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So did anyone have any interesting findings? I'll open this up.
On my testing on the Minnesota River, I tested a location where barges pull up to offload salt for winter maintenance. And to my surprise, they are not losing much salt in the river at all. On the Minnesota River, I tested 13 times, so basically once a month. And the highest I found it was 79 parts per million, and the lowest was 25 parts per million. So an average over those 12 or 13 months was just 40 parts per million. And I figured with barges parking there and them offloading the salt, that it would be much higher. So the Minnesota River has got enough volume in it to absorb. But my test site was probably within 200 yards of the depot. And that's partly because it's private property and you couldn't get right there to test.
Right.
But it's also downstream from 9 Mile Creek, which I've done probably 18 samples, and the high on 9 Mile has been 650 parts per million,
Right.
and the low 79 parts per million, for an average over that time period of 259 parts per million. And that is also dumping into the Minnesota River north of where I was located. So I really expected the Minnesota River to be higher than what it was. So it was curious to see how it actually worked out.
Yeah, Randy, I love your results because it's such a stark difference looking at the 9 Mile Creek results versus the Minnesota River results. His Minnesota River site is also right by the interstate highway. Like you would expect something higher there. But I think it highlights that, what's at risk here are those smaller creeks and streams. And that's where, the aquatic life that at least we at the Isaac Walton League are probably a little more worried about. That's where they're probably most vulnerable to the impact of salt. Kelly, I think you were going to say something. I heard you start. No? Carl, go ahead.
Well, so one thing that I've found is that, at our worst sites, which are near major road intersections, and there's nothing surprising about that, is that the water quality can be poor from anywhere from a quarter to a third of the year. And so that was always interesting. And then there's a gradual decline, in the summer and fall months to, again, the next snowstorm or ice event that we have. And so that's what I saw. And that was interesting. And of course, as we got closer, so the Muddy Branch goes into the Potomac River, and as a number of the neighborhoods that are closer to the Potomac River, they don't have as much salting. They're much more minor roads, and there aren't big shopping centers or anything like that. And so it was good to see that sites that were closer to the Potomac River, the chloride level would be lower on the same dates. So that was all interesting. The one last thing that was interesting was that we would see people on Nextdoor who would complain about saltiness in the water, and they were right on, because we would take a little cup and measure the chloride level in our out of our tap, and sure enough, sometimes it would be over 100 parts per million, and this would be a couple days or after a snowstorm, because that's how long it takes for it to go down the stream to the Potomac, to the inlet area near the Potomac, and then back. They clean it, of course, but they get rid of biological pollutants, and comes back to us. Obviously they don't take salt out, right? No one does that.
Right. So that's something, at least in our region, in Maryland, DC, Virginia, the Washington WSSC, I'm not sure what it stands for, but they're our water provider, and our water comes out of the Potomac River. You know, they've been documenting that the salt levels have been getting higher and higher in the intake. And of course, like every place, you know, the water treatment systems are not set up to remove salt. So it's probably not at a, you know, level of major concern for our health at this moment, but it's really hard to reverse, as you all probably know. Jeffrey, I saw a hand raise from you.
I think I've kind of mentioned this, but I thought I'd amplify it a little bit. The finding of pretty high salt levels year round was of considerable interest to us. 400 to 500 parts per million in August and September.
Wow.
And at that point, you know, the roads hadn't been salted for 6 to 8 months. And so then the question was, well, where's this salt coming from? And there's been quite a bit of research going on about that in the Delaware Valley, around the Philadelphia area. And it does seem to be that it's getting into the groundwater. It's seeping into the ground and then working its way through the ground into the different watersheds, and the salt's still there. The roots of plants don't take all that salt out. So that has been a real an eye-opener for us. The other thing that's just been interesting, we had a city council hearing about salt. One of the city councilmen actually held a hearing, and the streets department was there, and some of the municipal groups were there, and they're pretty aware of the problem, and they're trying to do what they can. I think a lot of it is coming off big shopping centers. The owners of the shopping centers, who aren't necessarily the owners of the stores in the shopping centers, they're just kind of big property managers really, are really worried about getting sued. And so they basically hire these operators who just come in and salt with very high levels of salt. I have actually submitted pictures to Isaac Walton League of that, of just this truck actually at a full stop, but its salt applicator just going and going while the guy waits for traffic to go by. And so that certainly is affecting Rock Creek, where I monitor, because we have two huge big box shopping centers that are basically our headwaters. So that's
right. That is not yours is not the only stream where the headwaters are at a shopping center.
Right. And it's really hard because if you talk to those people, they're worried about lawsuits.
Right. Carl, I saw you raise a hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So things that I saw that were interesting in you know, shopping centers and also around big parking lots. We've got some organizational, you know, like we've got FINRA, and they've got a big parking lot there. And one thing that happened was they would create a salt dump or a cache in that area, and they might not clean it up right away. They might not clean it up for a long time. They might forget about it. You know, salt is so cheap. It costs $58 a ton that, you know, they can dump it in a certain area and then come by and pick up some of it when they need to, you know, put it down somewhere else. And, you know, again, it's only $58 a ton. So, you know, forgetting about, you know, half a truckload of salt, you know, it's in the noise to these people, right? So, you know, you might want to, Jeffrey, we had a big area near Lake Varuna, which is a little lake near us, and we found that there was the Kentland Shopping Center nearby. You know, one of the maintenance crews, you know, the lawn and, you know, garden and street cleaning, you know, organizations. Again, they put down a dump of salt there, and it was killing the fish in this little lake next door. So I mean, that's something
that the local news talking about it.
Yeah, it's something to think about, and maybe, you know, drive around, you know, sometimes and take a look, and maybe that would help. Maybe you a little detective work sometimes, you know. In any case.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Okay. Juliella, did I hear you say something? We can move on. You.
Well, Randy mentioned it a little bit, the difference between the stream and the river testing. I have actually been doing a project based off of this research, which I know Emily mentioned using their research to further your own, which is really helpful. And during that, I wanted to compare the river content to the stream that I was doing content, and the river was always higher. So that's just something Randy mentioned, the difference with the amount of water. You know, the more water you have, it's gonna look like there's less chloride in it. And I know with Carl and Jeffrey, we're talking about the salt lasting through the seasons. I know when I did my initial ground testing in September, it was almost higher than it was in the winter. Whether that was because with the temperature, the solubility of salt, but definitely that it lasts. It's not just a winter problem. It's not just something that goes through the winter and then goes away. It definitely lasts through the seasons.
Yes. Yes.
I thought of something. Sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, our results are kind of just as expected, you know, right by our huge mall, the numbers were high and so on. But one thing that I appreciated this season is that in Madison, Wisconsin, they had some college students doing monitoring as well in the creeks in that area. And I just love the comparison of using the Saltwatch, the Quantab strips compared to conductivity testing and the results being the same. So I really appreciated that. That was a big deal for me because I was curious, you know, how accurate they were compared to other methods, and they were almost exactly the same numbers.
Yes. Yeah, we love that. That's something that we've had a few groups test, and it's really great to have that sort of corroborated, that our data is valuable. And, you know, it's not just about engaging people, it is also about getting good data. Great. So I'm hearing results all around. Did anyone share results with their community or try to, you know, share some messaging around this back with beyond just the monitors? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think I was kind of pushed into this a little further because of I think I mentioned this, the area watershed groups, and there's 3 or 4 of them that are all part of what's called the upstream cluster around Philadelphia, kind of decided to make salt and Saltwatch a kind of big issue this year. So for example, with the organization I'm affiliated with, Friends of Curtis Arboretum, there's someone on the board who is specifically supposed to become a salt kind of advocate around that issue. So it's just the profile of salt and salt measurement and salt reporting has gone up. And as a result, I began to get more active, and I've sent out a number of emails to my neighbors and had positive responses. I got a letter published in the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's interesting, I very religiously stuck to the number of words I was allowed to give, and that was published. But interesting, I see letters with 2 and 3 times that many. Oh well, because I had more to say. And I testified at a city council hearing, and a lot of people testified there. There was some defensiveness, again, from the streets department. I think they're kind of caught often between the environmental perspective and the business perspective that wants everything to just be up and running the next morning, regardless of how bad the weather is. So I don't know how much that's changed things yet, but it turned out to be rather satisfying to be able to speak out and talk about the results we've gotten. And there's been a response in terms of interest. And I think this is a slow process, actually. It's not suddenly going to turn around overnight.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah, that hearing was really exciting. And Sam, our Clean Water Director, she also testified at that hearing. Carl.
Yeah, I've done a lot of the same things, Jeffrey. I think your work sounds great. I take the graphs that we get and I try to share those. I cut and paste, information on those and try to share those with our states and local legislators. So talking about it is a big part of what we need to do to, get awareness out there. The other thing is when we talk about it, I think it's also valuable to talk about it not only from the macroinvertebrates that are getting killed or the small, the vegetation that's getting killed, but also talk about it from the perspective of the bridge that collapsed in Pennsylvania. Okay, it collapsed because of corrosion. Talk about the roads that we're constantly redoing because of corrosion to our roads, our bridges, our pipes. When you hear about a pipe that breaks, that bursts, well, some of that is corrosion over time, and salt contributes to that. So, and we've been putting down so much more salt. Those are all things that we need to bring up to them. Your cars. To someone who is very self-centered, talking about their car might be a good sales pitch, right? You're going to have to replace your muffler. And it's an obvious thing. People at the beach, their cars get beat up more rapidly than my car, who's in Gaithersburg, Maryland, because of the salt. So those are things that we can also talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, infrastructure is a big deal. People don't see what salt's actually doing, and we don't know the true cost of salt. We know what it costs to buy it, but we have no idea what the total cost of salt is at the end of the day. As far as sharing information, I share it with the watershed here, 9 Mile Creek. I also share it with the city of Edina. I've got 2 other Saltwatch people that I share the information with, as well as our Stopover Salting group.
Great. Yeah, I just want to highlight that Randy and his wife, they started a few years back from the perspective of finding out that this was a big problem and going straight into sort of community organizing, advocacy. They handed out teaspoons, tablespoons. Oh, he has his tablespoon with him.
1 teaspoon of salt includes 5 gallons of water.
Right. Yeah. So they handed out tablespoons to everyone at the Minnesota State House. And they're known. They did a lot of work trying to get some local ordinances passed. They had middling success, but then they wanted to get some data to back that up.
If I said tablespoon, that's wrong. It's teaspoon.
Oh, it's a teaspoon. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I always get that wrong.
Salt permanently pollutes 5 gallons of water.
Teaspoon's way worse than a tablespoon.
Yeah. Well, it's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, so.
Right. A tablespoon, 15 gallons. Yes,
yeah,
Jeffrey?
There you go.
I wanted to just mention one of the things that's on the Saltwatch site is encouragement to write to legislators and city council or township council people. And there's even a letter template there. And I actually did that. And the reason I want to mention it is because with that, I was able to very quickly, with the cut and paste feature of word processing, create about 12 letters to all the city council people in Philadelphia. And I happen to know, because when I was asked to testify at this hearing, Councilman Curtis Jones, who organized the hearing, was influenced very specifically by several letters he received from, just citizens like myself. And so I just, sometimes, you send off letters to senators and congressmen, you get this form letter back and you think, well, that didn't change things very much. But this was proof that it does make a difference sometimes. You know, as I say, his legislative aide said they got several letters about salt, and that's why he decided to have this hearing. So it's just encouraging to know that there are these resources on the Saltwatch site, and using them actually can do something. It's not just a feel-good activity.
That's really great to hear. Yeah, especially on the local level, I think folks are more likely to be responsive. Kelly, go ahead.
I am not sure if she is on this webinar, but Wisconsin as a whole is very fortunate to have Ellison Madison, who leads Wisconsin Saltwise. So if she's here, hi Ellison. You're one of my favorite people. But with her coordinate, the amount of work she's been able to accomplish in the last couple of years since she started her position is crazy, and it's wonderful. And you know, through her coordination, we had our Salt Awareness Week in January for the past 2 years, which allows to get groups throughout the state to share the same messages about salt issues, get the press involved, get stories about it, get newspaper articles written and that sort of thing. And then also with her help and work in my area of Wisconsin, one of our state representatives did introduce a bill related to liability issues for applicators. So yeah, it's cool. Stuff is happening, and it's, from our perspective, been a great way to get us the whole state on the same page and the whole state sharing the same messages about salt awareness.
Yeah, that's great. I will add, yeah, Allison has been a great resource, and Wisconsin Saltwise, a number of the resources we have on our website are fully from them. We credit them, but it's, you know, thank you, Wisconsin Saltwise, definitely. Juliella,
All right,
I know
well,
you
I
have
know
shared your results.
I mentioned my project earlier on. I've actually been able to present that research at several symposiums, gotten to talk to lots of people who have been really interested. And it's always interesting when they haven't known like that, because I mean, not very many people think about that. It's just something that, you know, we've always done. We always put salt on the roads, and then the snow melts, and then we can drive on the roads. And so when you actually like talk about, you know, how it's actually affecting other things, their faces are always like, oh, you know, because, you know, just talking to people about it, people who don't know, can actually, I think, change a lot. And I'm going to be able to write an article for a newsletter for actually the association that owns the trail that my stream is on, that I monitor, is going to have me write an article for them. So, but just definitely talking to people, whoever it is, just letting them know what's actually going on.
Yeah. And Julia, where did you share your research? At some state research symposium or something?
There was multiple, yes, state symposiums. I'm actually going to Colorado in June to present again at a national, it's competition, but like there are going to be a lot of people there, and to be able to present there, I'm going to be able to do that. So, but yeah, several state symposiums, state science fair.
Great. The state of Ohio has heard all about salt now from Juliella. Okay, so we're getting to the end of our time, but I guess, is there something you want to do with Saltwatch next? Where would you like to see Saltwatch go, either in your work or in your community? You know, we're always looking forward. I'd like to know what you guys are thinking about for the future with Saltwatch, or just with thinking about reducing salt use in your community. Carl has a lot of plans.
Well, I'm going to have a roundtable in Gaithersburg with, some local legislators, hopefully the Isaac Walton League, WSSC, another salt leader or two, to talk about legislation. I think that's maybe one of the, I'm hoping that is a good route to, making more of a difference with salt. The raising awareness is an important aspect, because people don't know there's a problem until you start raising awareness, and then you need to start pushing on legislators, what can they do to help you. So, again, I'm trying to spend time talking to them, building relationships with them. And, we had a bill in Maryland. It didn't make it out of committee. But, again, a lot of the things that Jeff's doing, testifying at these meetings, those are important aspects of what we're doing here too. So I think that's really an important aspect. And it's not just at the state level, because salt is a problem, at the city. In Maryland, it's a problem at the city, at the county, at the state level, and then also at the kind of at the private level. And so all four of those, you need to, if you can't get any traction at the state level, maybe you can get traction at the county level. And in Maryland, there are certain counties that are more progressive than at the state level. So, Montgomery County is one of those counties, and things that happen in Montgomery County then seem to get reflected at the state level later on. So, those are also good ways to move forward with things.
Thanks, Carl. Jeffrey.
I would love, in terms of what we want, what I would love is more help with how to approach businesses and real estate managers. I don't quite know how to do that, because their standard comeback is, well, we don't want to get sued. And the whole legal situation in our country is such that suing happens and huge awards are given, so that you can see why they don't want to take any risks. So I don't know how to best approach that.
So one thing I will say about that is definitely a very sticky issue, and comes down to the liability issue that I know Randy and his wife worked on for a long time in Minnesota. But one big thing is training the applicators. That's something that's Minnesota, and I know in parts of Wisconsin, and we're going to be hosting a training here in Gaithersburg in this late summer, that if there's some documentation that, the applicators applied salt to the level of safety that, that the salt is applied to a level that is expected to be safe, that helps protect from liability. That's what I've been told. But maybe Randy knows more.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's all about education. And there are different types of training for different people, whether it be people that do parking lots, or people that are doing our roadways, or people that are property managers. It's important to get them involved to understand their property before they even have somebody come out and bid their business. And it should also be based on doing a job, not based on charging by the amount of salt they apply, because we find many applicating companies that do private parking lots and businesses charge by the pound, not by the job. So part of it is getting them away from charging by the pound and charge by doing the job correctly, not based on the salt. Salt shouldn't be used for traction. And really, through training, you can learn the correct amount of salt to use without taking away safety. Safety is the most important part of the equation, but over-salting doesn't need to be part of that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Randy. And I know I don't know if you guys made it, but the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and also Wisconsin Saltwise, and I think we have it on our website too. There are some sample contracts for, service met as opposed to pounds applied. So that might be the right direction, Jeffrey, and we can talk to the Philadelphia area partners about it more too.
One other aspect is that salt is so cheap that we throw it everywhere, right? It really is. It's dirt cheap. It costs, again, $58 a ton at the city level. Okay, so it's dirt cheap, and so making it more expensive is an important aspect of the whole thing. So it's okay to put down salt when there's a big snowstorm, because we have to be able to, people need to be safe, right? You have to make sure the major roads are clear because people have got to get by, okay? We've got to make sure that emergency routes are clear because, someone might have a heart attack, right? They're dangerous intersections. We got to make sure those things are safe. And so trying to hide those things is something that is something that maybe we don't want to worry about. But, when people throw down rock salt and it's there, 24 hours after the snowstorm is over, and you can still see rock salt on the street, it needs to be cleaned up. And that's an aspect that is never covered, okay? It's just rained away, okay? We need to, people need to clean up after themselves. In Gaithersburg, much different than Minnesota, in Gaithersburg the next day, it's 40 degrees out. So a lot of it just melts on its own. So, when you see rock salt on the ground, that is salt that's not being used. That's excess salt. So, getting people to clean up, getting this cost, sharing, making private organizations pay the appropriate cost for things, being a nuisance, calling when you see these piles of rock salt on your street. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there, and the next time it rains, they're gonna go away, right? So that's what I think about that. I mean, we need to make it more expensive.
Yeah, again, I just want to highlight, we're trying to pull together a resource of who the right people to call are for that. There's a salt pile, I want to report it question for as many places as we currently cover and more. Great. Does Juliella, Kelly, anything you want to share about what's next for Saltwatch with your group or you? Kelly, go ahead.
I just had something to add that this year, instead of having our volunteers request a kit on their own and being sent like a whole box full of kits, worked so much better for us. Because then I held, I think, 1 or 2 trainings at my office and was able to go through a whole training and then hand out their kits. And so just in general, that worked a lot better this year. So we appreciated that.
Awesome. Happy to do it. Julielle, are you going to keep doing Saltwatch?
Yeah, because of my project, I just have so many more things that I feel like I want to continue to test through the seasons, because I started in September, but there's so many more things I want to compare and see. So it's going to be an ongoing process for me for a few years at least. So
excellent. Great. Well, this has been our time. This has been a great conversation. I'm so happy for you all to meet each other and for our audience to get to see some of our, most impressive salt watchers we have across the country. I do want to say I'm going to be leaving this position, so there will be a new Saltwatch campaign manager here next year, but we plan on continuing Saltwatch and growing it more in the future. And we're excited to see where it goes and to help you, make changes in your communities. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and, happy monitoring.
thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.